be right without being insufferable? I hope so. I just wrote a book on that very premise. Let's talk about it on Steve Brown, etc.
He's an old white guy, an author, broadcaster, and seminary professor who's sick of religion. And he's brought friends. Please welcome Steve Brown, etc.
And we're so glad you're here. I'm Steve, the aforementioned old white guy. Eric Guzman is here. You know, I've met some really smart and creative folks in my day. Matthew Porter is here.
I really like your new writer, Steve. Not only do I not have to work, I get to sit here and enjoy the jokes. I don't know that they're coming.
Look at Matthew. He's so proud of himself.
Yes, he is. It works. It works. If you get him to read the show prep, this show is funny.
It's funny one way or the other.
Yeah, that's right. That's true.
Matthew Porter, speaking of Matthew Porter is here. He's a person of real integrity and moral conviction right up until he's offered some Ben and Jerry's ice cream.
That is absolutely right. If they came out with a flavor called Communist Crunch, I'd be like, have you tried the red layer? It tastes like cinnamon! It's cinnamon!
Our producer, Jinx, is working hard in the little glass booth. The only thing longer than Jinx's hair are these introductions. And our resident megachurch pastor, Zach Van Dyke, is here with us. I don't think Zach's family could get any cuter, I didn't think. Then they got baby ducks as pets.
Yeah, we just let them go. I mean, they still hang out by the house, but they're on their own now.
They're outside ducks now?
They're outside. They're doing great.
Well, congrats on winning Instagram. And Kathy is the feminine side of the program. She keeps our ducks in a row.
Oh, nice. Well done.
Good one, Matthew.
What a setup.
Good night, everybody.
That was a quality opening.
Whoa.
Wow.
Goodness.
I hold in my nicotine stained fingers for the first time in the history of the world. Well, the first time I've seen it.
Nice.
They told me it was coming, and I think it came when I wasn't here. But now I hold a book that I wrote.
Good
One
work.
of the-
Good work.
One of the truly. No, it ain't that good, to be frank.
Yes, it
with
is.
you.
No, I just
But
read it. It's
says some
great.
good things.
It's great.
Really good.
It's titled, by the way, Talk the Walk, How to Be Right Without Being Insufferable.
Now, if it bombs big time, it's because I came up with the title for that book.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Okay.
I needed to mention
and
that.
you have such a great track record
Exactly.
of publishing.
Exactly.
Oh,
That's why I'm saying.
He came up with the main title. The subtitle was mine.
All right.
And I had to fight for it. Nobody likes it but me, and it's better than the title, frankly,
Good
Eric.
work. No, yeah, your title was better. Your title's always better. Everything you do is better.
Of course.
Look
it
at how
is.
many books you've written. I've written one, and you just keep blah blah blah,
What's
churning them out.
I was thinking last time you came out with the book, you came out with the one at the same time. So
Oh.
like,
Yeah, I tried to ride the coattails. We would sell them together at a discount, but it didn't work. It's not about me. I vowed not to talk about my book today because this is
Uh-huh.
Steve's.
That's
Yeah.
right.
This is Steve's day.
Steve's book day.
What
Steve's
was the
Day.
title of your
Don't
book?
worry about it. I'm not going to mention it.
No.
Shh.
The Seed, a true myth.
I sold one on Amazon last week. It was awesome.
Oh.
My ranking went down from 1,485,366 to 506,251.
But who's counting? Right?
Oh, yeah. Did that slip out? I actually knew the numbers.
One of the truly great, it really is a great book. It's just waiting on Eric when he gets over his need to continually mention it, then God will honor his
I
work.
think it's going to
and
be
it'll
after
become a
he's
bestseller.
after he's died.
Well,
I think
it
it's going to
could
be one
be.
of those ones like you're Picasso, man. Right? Wasn't he not famous? Till
Yeah, they
after
didn't know
he-
about him until he died.
That's the worst.
They'll put him on the New York Times bestseller list posthumously.
Yes.
What good is popularity if you're not around to enjoy it?
Hey, I thought we were going to talk about me.
Yeah, it's tough.
I'm sorry.
Hey, this book, by the way, is comes from. I one time said to church, there are millions of people going to hell in this world, and I don't give a rip. And it got very quiet. And I said, I've got friends that stand in malls and look at the lost and begin to weep. And I don't even know their names. How can I weep from them? I really don't care. And then I said, that's a confession. It's not a point of bragging about something that I think is good. I feel like I ought to care. And I think the people at that church, and they love me anyway, just started to pray for me. And something happened in my life. And this has been about 7 years ago. And over those 7 years, I can't say I stand in malls and weep because I really don't. I mean, I don't care that much. But I've gotten so I really do care. You know, I talk to people that aren't believers. In fact, I dedicated this book to them, the people I talk to, and said they're not as far from the kingdom as they think. And this book is the result of the prayers of the people in that church who prayed for me for so long that my cold heart would be less cold.
You may not stand in malls and weep, but I know that you pray every morning for revival.
I do.
That you really do want to see a grace awakening.
But that's not an always kind of thing. That started back about that same time that I started. I did occasionally because, you know, I got tired of pagans taking over the world, you know, and it was messing with my lifestyle and things that I knew were true. But legitimately praying for an awakening, that God would pour out his spirit on a dry and thirsty land, and that's where we live. It really is dry and thirsty. It's things, the day is far gone, and we are still not revived. So this book is a very small, insignificant effort to say something to Christians and to myself, because we're doing something wrong. Jesus said, you lift me up, I'll draw everybody to myself. Now, scholars say that he's talking about the cross, and he is, of course. But he's talking about something more profound than that. If what he said was true, and everything he did say was true, then we're doing something wrong. And it isn't his fault, it's our fault. In fact, the people that I talk to don't have much trouble with Jesus. They have trouble with me. And so this isn't a book that was written to preach at people. This was an analysis of myself. And it starts off by saying something you don't say in a politically correct world. We're right, they're wrong. That's true.
I'm with you so far.
Yeah, you could go for that.
Color me intrigued, Steve.
But we are right. You know, we're not right about everything. I'm more right than anybody else here because I'm ordained, but we're not right about everything. We're not right about politics necessarily, or about our philosophy or sociology or ducks or whatever. But in terms of the verities of the Christian faith, it is revealed propositional truth. And if we didn't believe that, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. My friend Reggie Kidd, I one time wanted him to help me in an argument I was having with my son-in-law, who said that music is in the person who listens and produces it, not in some kind of weird standard out there. And so I knew Reggie would fix it. I just didn't know how to win the argument. And I went to Reggie. He has a PhD from Duke. He'll be able to eat my son-in-law's lunch. And he said to me, he's right. I said, what do you mean he's right? He can't be right. He's my son-in-law. He said he's right. And he said, if you have a stable meta-narrative, everything is permissible. If you don't have a stable meta-narrative, everything is dangerous. And that goes back to what we have. We have a stable, what's a meta-narrative? It's a narrative that covers all the contingencies. It's a narrative that looks at the world and says, this is what it's about. This is what's important. And this is what's not important. Now, you don't want to go to a doctor who says he's not sure, or fly with a pilot who thinks it doesn't matter what altitude you fly at, as long as you're flying and you're sincere about it. You don't want to go to a Christian either, who says, I think maybe this is true, but I'm not sure, and I'm still making a decision on this. I've made the decision, okay? And if you're not a believer, we're right and you're wrong. So just deal with it.
Bring on the revival.
Welcome back to Steve Brown, etc. And I'm the product today. That's what I do. Is I sit around,
I think
turn
you are
out
every day.
product. That's what I do.
That is what you do.
So we can pay the bills around here.
You crank it out.
It's not about what I say; it's how much we can sell of it. And if we can sell enough of it, we'll all get paid.
And speaking of selling enough of it,
Oh,
Monday, June the 3rd, if you would like to participate in the Key Life book launch party, please join us if you're in our area. And if you're not in our area, hop on a plane. It's at Willow Creek Presbyterian Church in Winter Springs, Florida. If you go to the Key Life website, keylife.org, there is a place right there on the right-hand side where you can click on, you can make a reservation. There's no charge, but we'd like to know how many are coming so we can make sure we have enough food. And
will there be
beverage, et cetera.
cake?
There
Will there-
will
Country
be.
cookies.
Listen, there will be cake.
There will be cake.
And
I'm in.
And listen, there is a significantly reduced rate on the cost of the book for that night only. So you want to go to the Key Life website and check out that information and join us. It's going to be great.
But
It's
you-
going to be great.
But you do have to make reservations because we could run out of vodka. If
We could run out of cake.
Now I do have some reservations.
And what is the name of the book, Steve?
Oh,
has to go
Eric
look.
is back.
He
Eric
has
is
no
back to his
idea. He
production
Has to
days.
go
no
look.
idea.
What's the name of the book?
it's called
Scandalous freedom. Oh no, that was before.
it's called Talk the Walk: How to Be Right Without Being Insufferable.
Well, that sounds great. Well, first of all, Steve, I want to say if this book helps just one person, I'm going to be so mad because that's a lot of effort for just one person. It's not even, that's a tragedy.
I feel that pain.
Yeah. Second of all, I love the premise. I mean, basically, even if you're completely right, theologically, politically, etc., and you're not, but if you were, that's not always enough. That's not all there is to it. And the way you launch into it is talking about silence is golden. And I would have grown up thinking, look, your best bet is to become very well reasoned, being able to defend the faith, just come guns ready. Are you saying that is not important, or that's just not always what's necessary, the moment calls for?
Well, at some point, you got to say something. My wife, who's a musician, says the universal language is music. And that sounds good until you try to communicate the Graf Wellhausen documentary hypothesis, and it just doesn't work. So our faith is a faith that has propositions, true propositions to it. But the problem is we're speaking those propositions to people that don't want to hear. They don't even care. And so we're speaking to the air with arrogance and self-righteousness. And I want to say to myself, in fact, there was a time in my office when a friend of mine said, "You talk too much." And I put a sign in that center drawer, so if you pulled the drawer out, only I could see it. And it said, "Shut up. Just shut up." Well, that's what Christians need to do, because we don't know how to even speak the language. We don't know where people, and everybody you see is needy and hurtful and has pain like yours and is lonely sometimes and afraid sometimes. But you don't know that because you're too busy telling them the propositions that they taught you to reason out and speak. So sometimes silence really is golden.
Even music has pauses, right? Make it work.
There you go.
There's a rest.
You talk about speaking truth from self-interest. As somebody who is very interested in himself, can you tell me what you're getting at there?
Well, the problem with religion is that it becomes just another institution. You know, I was kidding about a product so we can pay our salaries. We have to pay the heating and air conditioning around here with this equipment that we use that you can now see because we're doing video is really expensive. We got a bunch of the bills that we got to pay all the time because we're on about 600 radio stations. And, you know, all of a sudden it becomes that which I protect. And it's not about what the message is. It can very easily become that which I protect. And I fear, and I include myself, that many of us as clergy, as professors at seminary, as teachers in Christian colleges, as headmasters of Christian schools, as people who write books, it really does become about us. It becomes about protecting my territory and my power and my leverage and my sources. And I see that in myself all the time. And I see it in everybody sitting at this table. And I see it everywhere I go. And I think if we don't stop that, nobody's going to listen to what we have to say.
You know, with social media, it seems like you're not, and it's just human nature, but I see it more in social media, where there's what somebody's saying, but there's how they're saying it. And it's just, it's like positioning, it's posturing. I need you to know that I know this. So the message isn't even the thing. It's just kind of establishing where your territory, where your expertise is. It's just kind of like so much posturing. It's kind of a little bit gross sometimes, except when I do it.
Or to post pictures of your ducks. That, you know, that's how I use it. But
And you know,
you win on that, man.
You know, once you see it, you know, I've worked on this for a year. Once you see it, and you start thinking about it, man, it's like everywhere. I can't go on social media without getting depressed. You know, if I go on Twitter, there is so much anger and rage there that it just depresses me. I go on Facebook, and everybody's smiling, and they're ducks, you know, and everything is hunky-dory. It's kind of like we moved into a Disney World kind of place, and I get depressed. And then people do what you're talking about, and that depresses me. And then I look at myself, and I find out, you know, we're all doing that.
Right.
So we got to stop.
yeah, and it's not just us Christians. I mean,
Oh, no.
everyone feels like they're posturing in some way to.
Oh, it is so true. I think we have this we wear we wear a hair shirt and get a cat o' nine tails and beat ourselves up as if we were the only people in the world doing this. This is a human proclivity. And I think that's the place where Christians could be different. Not because we don't smoke or drink or cuss or hang out with people who do. I suspect that's good that we don't do that sort of thing, but that's not our witness. Our witness is right here. When we stand before a world without armor, without trying to defend ourselves, and when we have a chance after we've listened, we speak truth kindly and gently and lovingly. And by the way, we didn't say it, but the most dangerous thing that can happen to you, the most dangerous thing that can happen to you in your life and your relationships is to be right.
That's why I avoided it at all costs.
That's right.
My wife could vouch for that.
Guys, we'll talk about this some more. We know it's all about me. So we'll come back and talk some more about walking the walk. We're talking about one of the truly great works of Christendom called Talk the Walk, How to Be Right Without Being Insufferable.
And
By Steve
Oh,
Brown.
yeah.
Yeah, and I wrote it. But let me tell you something. The people sitting at this table and in this building have given me the ideas for this book. I mean, I don't want to say, do you agree with these kinds of premises? Because I know you do, but I'd like for you to talk about it just a little bit. Is it dangerous to be right? Is it? Are we talking to walls, to people that don't want to hear? What can we do to fix that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a great question because I see from putting that in a practical point of view, like right now when I see a discussion online about like abortion,
Yeah.
I'm wildly passionate about that. And yet you're like, is it worth participating? Whoever I'm talking to on the other end is entrenched over here or over here. Is it just creating noise and heat and animosity, and it only makes the people posting feel better, and that's the extent of the good it does? I don't know.
You know, I have a pastor friend in Tennessee, outside of Knoxville, who refuses to announce pro-life marches. And I said, "Yeah, but you're pro-life. What are you doing?" He said, "The problem is that when you're out marching, the people that hold up the index finger, they agreed with you about Jesus and about abortion before you marched. And those who hold up another finger, they're never going to change. But everybody who says nothing, who has had an abortion, or who has loved somebody who's had an abortion, they will never darken the doors of your church again." Now, does that mean we shouldn't say anything? We shouldn't march? No, I think we ought to march. I think we ought to speak up. I thought that movie Unplanned blew me out of the saddle. Man, I still think about it. I thought about it for days. So we can't not speak truth. But
Right.
what do you say?
Well, I go back to what you say. I think it's in the early part of the book, the whole thing of you too. Just that disarming power of when you listen to somebody without an agenda, and you can identify whether they're Christian or not Christian, with their pain, with their struggle, with their confusion, and then you just go, "You too? That's me too."
Yeah.
That's
disarming.
It's completely disarming. I mean, how can you argue with that? When you're like, "Oh, well, I thought we were gonna fight. Should we hug? I don't know."
Well, for me, the way I deal with it is I'm just paralyzed by it. And then sit there struggling with the guilt because I know I should be saying something. But one, I so want to be liked. I don't want to, because you talk about, hey, truth divides. I mean, when you say we're right and you're wrong, people aren't going to like that, you know? And I really want people to like me a lot. It's horrible. It's a sickness. But I end up paralyzed by it. So for people like me who sit there in guilt, not driven to actually share by the guilt, but are wallowing in it because they're paralyzed. I mean, what do you say about that?
Well, Eric, you talk about that, but one of the problems is you work for Christian organizations, and they always ask, "What do you do?"
Oh, but there's ways around that.
No,
I do
but I've
radio
watched
shows. You know what I mean? Come on.
Yeah, you can say radio show, but when somebody gets closer, I think, by the way, that your way of doing it, even or not doing it, even if you're not doing it for the wrong reasons, is important because you show. You play pool with a guy whose life you saved practically every week. He knows. He knows what you do, and he knows what you believe. And you can't help it because you smell like Jesus. You really do. You are so guilty that it comes out your ears and your nose and your mouth. People get that. And, I think probably what you just confessed is true. And I just want you to know you're forgiven because Jesus died for you and knew you would do it that way anyway. So he fixed it. He not only forgave you, he caused you to smell like Jesus, and you can't help it. You can't get away from it. You can't stop it. There isn't a person on at this table that can do that. I mean, if we just show, and you often say, "You too, me too," because you want to be liked.
I'm just like you.
Yeah, I'm just like you. But because you smell like Jesus and you can't get away from it, and the Lord knows you have tried.
Yeah.
You can't get away from it. So we got to show, and we got to show without armor. Yeah, we're right, but it's a small list of things we're right about. It's a lot smaller than most of us would think.
I would love to hear what those things are as we go along. I mean, what's the truth?
Like the Apostles' Creed. It would be what C.S. Lewis said when he said mere Christianity. It would be the basic things that are the verities of our faith, and we're right about those. We can't compromise on them. Let's talk about truth when we get back. That should make it possible to land this plane with some kind of reasonable comments on the subject of truth. Don't go away, and we promise we won't either. We'll see you on the other side of the break. Welcome back. I promised, and I'm delivering. We are back. We're talking about a book I wrote called Talk the Walk, How to Be Right Without Being Insufferable. Kathy, give us some more information on that thing Monday night.
Key Life book launch party, Monday evening, June the 3rd, 7 p.m. at Willow Creek Church in Winter Springs. If you go to keylife.org, right there on the homepage on the right-hand side, there's a place where you can click on, and it'll give you information on registering. The event is free, but we would like to know if you're coming so we can make sure we have enough cake.
Lots of cake.
Zach is one of the MCs, and he won't even come unless there's cake.
Me and Steve's pastor. And we've got a little something planned for the beginning. So
right. They want to
be there.
They said they wouldn't do it. That's how much they love you, Mr. Brown. They wouldn't do it without cake. So we have ordered, thanks to our good friends at New Growth Press, we are going to have cake. And so it's going to be a great evening. And you can get all the information you need. You get the location for the church. You can also, there's a link there also to get your reservation for this great evening. And Mr. Guzman will be there, another of our famous authors. It's just going to be a great evening.
Who wrote the book, The Seed?
Now,
Available at keylife.org.
Can they get a picture with you, Eric, if they come?
If they want
$5.
to, they
absolutely.
$5.
Yeah, I'll
Yes,
be
sir.
selling them.
Look for the
out,
very
out-
small
out of
table
the
in
back of
corner.
his van in
Out
the
of the
parking
trunk
lot.
of
You
his
want a
car,
book?
yeah.
It's an allegory. Get over here.
Hey, and we're gonna show a video that is gonna be outstanding, with me standing in a.
Don't tell.
Let it be a surprise.
Let it be a
Magical place.
surprise. He's going to be someplace you would never, ever in a million years envision that he would ever be. So there you go.
It sounds like a setup.
Oh,
Right?
I know.
It is a setup.
I was trying to come up with the joke,
wanna-
but
It
I
is a
couldn't.
setup.
I'm the producer, and I don't even know where it's going to
It is a setup. Okay, Eric, what was your question?
Now,
dear?
if you can't make it to Central Florida, if you can't get here to Willow Creek Church and be a part of this thing,
Right.
might I suggest
You may.
that you go to keylife.org,
Yes.
buy a box of books, and
Yes.
have your own launch party.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
We'll send you the video. It'll be almost like you're there. We can mail you some cake if there's any left over.
There you go.
And I think it'd be a great time. And you could be a part of the starting of this revival.
Well, and
Yes, you
it
can.
really, I mean, in all seriousness, I have read the book. It is a great book, Steve. And it's one of those books that, like, I want to take my congregation through. Like, I want everyone in their small groups to read it and talk about it, because I think it makes very practical what we're all dealing with, especially in light of kind of where we're at politically and
Oh,
social
that's
media
true.
and all that.
You didn't say that about my book.
Well,
You didn't want to take the
yours-
church through my book.
Yours is more of a niche audience.
I don't have an audience.
How
I have
big is
an,
a niche?
I have an audience.
Anyway, we're talking about Talk the Walk
Yes.
by Steve Brown.
And you promised the truth.
Okay, we'll
Give
talk
us
about
some truth.
All right, I'll give you some truth.
You can't
said,
just
"What's
shorthand
true?"
it and say
I
Apostles'
said,
Creed.
well,
I mean,
said, yeah, well, that is pretty much when Lewis wrote the book Mere Christianity. He said at the beginning he didn't want to get into the debates about the smaller things that shouldn't divide Christians. And his statement was the Apostles' Creed was the basic creed about which Christians agree. And all the things in the Apostles' Creed, and I would add Scripture because I have a high view of Scripture, those things are true. And especially the main things that change lives, that make a difference. And the main thing is called forgiveness. It's called redemption. It's called justification. I wrote a chapter in the book, by the way, called Watered Down Wine. And the publisher didn't like the title. And I said to them something very pastoral. You're a fruitcake. You have no taste whatsoever. And that is going to stay, or I'm not doing the book. And they finally, kicking and screaming, agreed with it. But it's a great title. And Justin Holcomb, who works for us here and does a lot of the publishing, said that we ought to say, watered down wine won't give you a buzz. I thought, that is so cool. Or maybe you said it, Matthew, but somebody said it. And
I think it was Mark Twain. No.
But that's true. You know, the truth we have is life-changing truth. It's, the Big Ten aren't written to make us miserable. They're written to make life, which is awful anyway, better. We're so ridden by guilt. When you read the hatred and the vitriol on social media, that's coming from so much guilt and insecurity and paranoia and shallowness and that's what Jesus deals with.
You know, the thing that you're talking about truth has really come home to me over the last few months. I have a family member who is a new believer, and he's just entrenched, engulfed in his own personal study, without a lot of assistance from other people. But it's twofold for me, because it's been amazing to watch this process happen, and the reality of some things that I've always heard you say for years, and that is, that God doesn't need me or anybody else when it's time. I mean, this guy is in the kingdom because Jesus brought him there. He didn't have any help from somebody, beating on him, with scripture and all that kind of stuff. But the interesting thing right now is that in his study, which is so extensive, he's finding all these different things that he thinks that are really important. Like he's he's fully embraced like Reformed theology instead of more of Arminian theology. And he's going back and forth with all this stuff, and he's tending to take all this stuff and put it all together and make everything of equal value and equal importance. And I'm not here to argue, the value of Reformed theology versus Arminian or anything like that. But I said to him, there's got to be a point in time when you realize that it's possible to disagree about some things with brothers and sisters in Christ, but agree that you can walk together being part of the kingdom. And you don't have to feel like you have to run from the church unless it's stuff that's really important. And he said, like one. And I said, like the fact that Jesus is the way to heaven. Jesus is who forgives you. There's not anybody else who forgives you. It's Jesus. If you walk into church and they say that there's somebody else that can do that's good for you, but there's somebody else that can do that, then another Steve Brown quote, you need to be heels and elbows and get out of there, because that's truth.
Yeah.
And that's crucially important. Whereas other things, you don't have to beat people, which is what you were saying before. You don't beat people over the head with some of those things. You don't beat people over the head with anything, but I mean, there's just the truth part is what is so crucial.
And we can't fiddle with that.
No.
The truth is the truth is the truth. And it's the only thing that gives you a buzz. It's the only thing that changes lives. If you could just go to somebody like Jesus did, the prostitute who broke into the Pharisees' dinner party. He didn't give her a lot of theology or Jewish history. He just said, "You're forgiven." He didn't even mention a Bible study. What's with that? You're forgiven. And I like you.
You can't just point to me
He can. It's his show. He can do whatever
and
he
say
wants.
talk. You have to host, right?
Okay, I'll host.
I mean,
I'm
rejoin.
the host of this program, and now Eric will say something.
All right, welcome back to Steve Brown, etc. And we're talking to Steve Brown about his new book, Talk the Walk, How to Be Right Without Being Insufferable. He's very proud of the subtitle, and I'm very proud of the Talk the Walk. So we were talking about watered down wine doesn't give you a buzz. And what we were discussing off the air is that a lot of people say grace or grace but. And of course Jesus loves you. Of course you're forgiven. But now get to it. Get to work. Add something to it. You got to be faithful, and all that stuff, which is, like you say, there's nothing wrong with that. But that's not the gospel. That's not the pure truth. That's not the wine without the water.
That is so true and profound. That's one of the problems we have. We keep mixing it with other stuff, with our politics, with our sociology, with our politically correct nonsense. It goes on. It's not just a Christian thing. It's a pagan thing, dude.
But it can be stuff like, okay, you're forgiven, and now here's the sermon on how you need to have a good marriage, and here's how you're going to be a good father, and here's how and those are all great things, and people hear it, and they go, yeah, of course, well, I should be doing that. And little by little, you get weighed down with this guilt and this baggage.
And then you can't do it anymore.
And you can't even see the truth that you're talking about is that it's finished, that he loves you. Enjoy it.
Oh, man. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Nice.
All right. Who's going to be here next week?
Next week, Ken Harrison, who's written a book called Rise of the Servant Kings. He is part of a movement to reestablish Promise Keepers, which was a big thing a number of years ago and has sort of dissipated somewhat, but
Yeah.
they're working on it. This would be a ministry to men, what the Bible says about being a man. So, guys, make sure you're here next week.
Excellent.
I'm sure he'll have something to say to each one of you.
Ken is an old friend, and he had been a businessman for 1,000 years and very successful. And he was involved in Promise Keepers, and that thing filled stadiums all across America. And then one day you woke up and it died. And he's been asking and meeting with people all over the country, why did it die? And he's taken as a project the same way he took on business. To see it come back and to make an impact. He's got good things to say.
And remember, go to keylife.org, check out the book launch Monday, June 3rd at 7 p.m. and register to come and join us.
And order Talk the Walk.
And order the book.
Listen, we're coming back. I don't care. Next week. Between now and then, don't do anything we wouldn't. And that gives you a wide, wide berth.